Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. In this particular edition, it's doubling up as a night flight. We're going to start off talking about the world title fight in the featherweight division, which happened not too many moments ago. Brandon Figueroa knocking out Nick Bull in round 12 in dramatic fashion. He becomes world champion all over again. But before we get to some boxing talk and non-boxing talk, whatever you guys want to discuss, I first want to acknowledge everybody in the live chat. First of all, big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, the classic story of the Mexican knocking out the British champ. Yet again, it shows up in Liverpool. Scousers get knocked out, bro. It does seem that Mexicans just haunt British fighters. Shout out to Julius, shout out to Team Batman Boxing, Railway Boxing, The Box, Truth Channel, Mark, Sam O'Donoghue, W. Murray, Railway and Boxing fan, David Fisher, Desi Desert, Casa. Matt Borgerson says, I actually think the Nick Bull story is over. Okay, your chin doesn't come back once it pops. Ian says they were going to line up Bull versus Inoue. No chance he'd have lasted more than 4 rounds. Railway and Boxing fan says, I think Nick Bull will be back. He's only like 28 or 29 years old. We got Isaac Blings. He says how quick people are to write him off. Yasmin says Figueroa was ahead on 2 of the judges' scorecards. Big up Rich Franklin. Big up Kieran Malcolm. Big up Tony S. He says they done Nick Bull dirty with that thumbnail. Oh, okay. Yeah. Askip says Bull is such a dirty fighter. He had it coming. What's up, Afro Soul? What's up, Nick? He says Bull's team were a disgrace, as were the Liverpool crowd. Big up Jimmy. He says blessings, big man. Yeah, big up Jimmy. In Circle, big up. He says, in a way, would put a different kind of beating on Bull. Big up Matt, he says, by the way, Gustavo Martin posted judges' scorecards for the fight. I don't know if you got them. No, I haven't seen the scorecards yet. But somebody just said that Figueroa was ahead on 2 of the scorecards, so perhaps he would have won anyway if he hadn't knocked Nick Bull out. And, you know, so many fighters from overseas are concerned about the judging in the UK. But in this case, if Figueroa was ahead like that, then I guess there are some instances where the judges are fair. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. Murray says, why are our fighters so hittable? It just comes down to the way they're trained, the knowledge of the trainers, and also the way that they spar. People in the UK, fighters in the UK, don't tend generally, I'm generalizing here, to spar as hard as they do in American gyms. So when someone is really sparring hard and they're concentrating on developing their defense, well, it's going to pay off in the end. I mean, for example, Mike Tyson was not the most amazing defensive fighter ever, but he was better than most pressure fighters when it comes to defense. He was. I would say he had a better defense than most pressure fighters. And one of the things that Mike Tyson had to do when he was coming up is Kevin Rooney, Teddy Atlas, Cus D'Amato, one of them, or maybe several of them, would put Mike Tyson in the ring against welterweights. Okay, they'd put him in the ring against the welterweight, and the welterweight would go hell for leather trying to hit Mike Tyson in the face, and Mike Tyson was not allowed to punch back. He could only use defensive maneuvers. And they'd do that for round after round after round, with Mike Tyson not allowed to punch back, but the welterweight allowed to hit him as hard as they possibly wanted, you know, could possibly do. And obviously, you know, welterweights are faster than heavyweights and whatnot. And even though they're welterweights, Mike Tyson, I remember him saying specifically this. He said, yeah, they're only a welterweight, but when they punch you in the face, it don't tickle. So don't think that just because it's welterweights who are throwing punches at me in that scenario, that it doesn't hurt when you get hit. So yeah, things like that help to develop defense. I mean, just look at Jack Catterall. Jack Catterall does have a good defense. Jack Catterall is a British fighter that doesn't get hit clean that much. And he learned those skills in the United States. Jack Catterall was sparring with who? Canelo and a bunch of other people over in America. So yeah, he learned those skills. He developed those skills in the United States. And you have to have a mindset to want to develop your defense. And obviously some people are going to have an aptitude for it. Some people are going to be better at picking up and developing defensive skills than others. Big up Just Brian. He says, do you think Bull can get a belt at 126 again at 130? It's really hard to say just yet because Bull has a style. Which is very taxing on him, on his body. First of all, he's a very short guy, so he has to work extra hard just to get in range to let his shots go. And then you're doing that in training, not just in fights. So that's more taxing on your body than a tall guy who can sit back and just let you walk onto his jab. Do you know what I mean? It takes more maniacal training. A guy of Bull's height has to train generally harder than his opposition. So there's that aspect of it when it comes to the wear and tear. Then there's the actual punches he's taking. And then there's the fact he's been knocked out by Figueroa. Somebody alluded to this earlier in the live chat. Sometimes when a fighter gets knocked out for the first time, yeah, their chin never is the same again. But there are other occasions when a guy gets knocked out and subsequently seems to take a shot all right. An example of that one would be Lennox Lewis. So Lennox Lewis was knocked out badly twice in his career. After those knockout defeats, he went on to be in fights where his chin was tested and it passed the test. So he got knocked out by Oliver McCall in 2 rounds. A few fights later, he went in there against Ray Mercer, who could punch. He wasn't like the biggest puncher in the heavyweight division, but he could definitely punch. I mean, look what he did to Tommy Morrison. He hit Lennox Lewis on the chin clean, consistently for 10 rounds, and Lennox Lewis didn't go anywhere. Didn't go down, didn't even come close to going down. And Ray Mercer, after the fight, said how shocked he was, how surprised he was that Lewis was able to take his shots. Then Lewis was knocked out by Hasim Ratman in South Africa. Now, I suspect Lewis's punch resistance in that fight was somewhat affected by fatigue due to the fact that the fight was happening at altitude and Lennox Lewis didn't arrive in country early enough to acclimatize to the altitude. He was also heavy and he just looked slow and ponderous moving around the ring, and he seemed to be gasping for air because of the altitude. Hasim Ratman, of course, had done the sensible thing and arrived in South Africa because they were fighting in Johannesburg. It's at altitude. Arrived in country much earlier. He was running in the streets of Johannesburg and all that kind of thing. So he was more used to the altitude than Lewis was. So I think that contributed to Lewis getting knocked out in that way. But either way, he got knocked out. And a few fights later, he's in there against Vitaly Klitschko. Klitschko's hitting him with all sorts of shots. Not that Klitschko was a massive one-punch man, but he was a solid puncher. And again, nothing happened. Lewis didn't go down. He didn't get knocked out. He got clipped bang on the chin plenty of times. Flush. And there are other examples. If people don't like the Lewis example, there are other examples of fighters who, yeah, got knocked out, in some cases badly, and came back and still had pretty good punch resistance. I mean, maybe Derek Chisora is an example too. He got knocked out by Dylan White, but he came back and he's not an iron-jawed fighter, but he's had decent punch resistance since. Although I do think it's been deteriorating, but I wouldn't say that Chisora's chin was totally gone after the Dylan White fight. I don't think that's an accurate thing to say. I think he still had decent punch resistance even after that, as I say, Dylan White knockout defeat in the rematch. So yeah, it all depends. We'll have to see with Nick Ball how, if or how his punch resistance has been affected by this. Because again, for him, I reckon a lot of it, yeah, it was a great punch, but I also think it was partly fatigue that led to him being knocked out like that. 12th round at the end of the day. Big up GMS Nightmare. He says Tony Bellew versus Opataya, Nelson Benavidez Okoli. All right. I take Opataya over Bellew. In fact, the only person, would I take Bellew over any of those guys? The only person I'm not sure about would be Bellew versus Benavidez. I might, because I haven't seen Benavidez at cruiserweight yet. So I might give Bellew the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, he came up from light heavyweight too. I might even pick all of those guys over Tony Bellew. But unsure about Benavidez because I haven't seen him at 200 pounds yet. Big up, where's Carlos? Tony S says Nick Ball's style isn't sustainable. One, he has a short shelf life. He needs to be in big fight after big fight and make the most of it. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, I think Nick Ball will never be the same. Can't go 130 because he's too small, and 122 might be too much on his body. Dude might be a legit tweener. We shall see. I mean, we can only speculate right now. We just have to wait for the remainder of his career to play out. But yeah, I will say that history shows that short, aggressive fighters tend not to have the longest careers. Short, aggressive fighters generally. Now, somebody's going to say Manny Pacquiao, but Manny Pacquiao isn't really a pressure fighter. Let me say, Nick Ball mixes it up. He isn't purely front foot. He'll walk around and do different things too. But he's primarily an aggressive fighter. He's primarily applying pressure. He's a dynamo in there, okay? He doesn't go for as many walk-arounds and doesn't box as much as Manny Pacquiao does, or did. So short, aggressive, dynamo-type fighters tend not to last that long at a top level. Mike Tyson didn't last that long at a top level. Joe Frazier didn't last that long at a top level. Again, because of what I've already described. But will Nick Ball be the exception? We'll see. Also, there's the fact that fighters in the lower weight classes generally tend not to last as long as heavyweights. So Nick Ball in his late 20s now, we'll see. But big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat as always. Yeah, big up Philip Answer. Big up Supersized Fries. He says the reason Al Heyman isn't in the lawsuit is due to the contract Floyd signed with him as an advisor. He can only go to mediation. Is that right? Where did you get that information from? That's interesting. And I've seen fighters come out and actually defend Al Heyman. Now, you might say, well, they're still advised by Al Heyman. Of course they'd defend him. But one of them who, as far as I know, or maybe it's because of a contractual thing, I'm not sure, the contractual thing that you just described, but one of them who's come out to defend Heyman, kind of defend him, is Sergio Mora. Did you guys see the Mora and Mannix podcast the other day? Where Sergio Mora was talking about the Floyd Mayweather, Al Heyman, Showtime, Espinosa situation. And he said that Heyman's reputation among fighters is impeccable. He says he's seen what Heyman has done for fighters and how well he's treated them, and he was treated very well when he was a PBC fighter, and he was only a PBC fighter relatively for a relatively short amount of time, Sergio Mora. But he was basically defending Al Heyman and saying that Floyd has just been reckless with his money. And because he's been reckless with his money, now he's doing an audit a decade later, a decade after the last time he fought on Showtime, just about, in a real fight anyway. Now he's doing an audit to try and find money from somewhere. So they've concocted this notion that he's been getting fleeced by Showtime, Espinosa, and Heyman. I don't know whether that's the case, but that's the gist of what Sergio Mora said. Big up Matt Borgerson. He says, Sebastian Reyes versus Figueroa for first defense. Fire. Yep, that's a very interesting first defense. A tough fight. I mean, Figueroa's been in plenty of tough fights. Obviously, the two defeats to Fulton, where he got outboxed. Big up Matt Borgerson. Big up 1-1 for the super chat. Much appreciated. No comment on that one. Just a super chat. Big up. Matt Borgerson says he got knocked out bad. Yeah, so Matt Borgerson definitely does not believe that Nick Ball has anything left after this. He could be right, but he also could be wrong. We just have to wait and see. Tony S says, Duke McKenzie said in a recent interview that the only fighter he can see giving Shakur Stevenson issues is Gary Antoine Russell. I heard Dwyer saying the same view. Personally, I think that Floyd Schofield, I'm not saying Floyd Schofield would beat Shakur Stevenson at all, but because Schofield is young, very young, he's like, what, 23 or something, 22? He's still got that youthful energy. The youthful energy that T.O. doesn't have. Schofield is used to running red lights. He's used to taking these wild, crazy chances in fights, which of course he could be punished for, but when you take chances like that, and when you're so unorthodox and so random with the way that you attack, it could also be a case that you throw off a more conventional fighter with the random nature of your style. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's one of those ones where either Stevenson would totally dismantle Floyd Schofield. And when I say dismantle, I mean get control of the fight and start outboxing him and hitting him with nice shots early. Or it's a fight that might puzzle Shakur Stevenson for a while because of that random style that Floyd Schofield has, where he's got very quick feet, he moves around the ring, and he jumps in with like crazy power shots and all this kind of stuff. Not everyone is going to be able to read his moves. You know, you look at a guy like Stevenson, who is technically immaculate. Sometimes when you're that technically immaculate, because you've been in there against so many other technically solid guys, you get used to being able to read fighters who have good fundamentals. When you go in there against the guy who doesn't have, not that Floyd Schofield's got terrible fundamentals, he's not a Wilder, but as I say, he's unconventional. He does things which are not in the rule book, right? And one of the reasons he's been cut so many times in his young career is because he's unconventional. He jumps in and he takes chances and he's reckless. So personally, I think Schofield's an interesting opponent for Shakur Stevenson. I'd like to see the fight. Someone says, Andrew Kane trying to kick Figueroa's team just for celebrating is wild. Big up the sweet maths. Much appreciated for the super chat. He says, if Mayweather does have money issues, do you think he's the type of guy that can make $100 million comeback fights, lower his lifestyle standard, make $100 million from comeback fights, lower his lifestyle standard and live within his means from here onwards? He's gonna have to. You know, he's gonna have to, but the trap that a lot of people fall into, and it's not just super rich athletes that fall into this trap, even, you know, regular folk can fall into this trap, is you can get into a comfort zone where you think that the money you're making now, you're always going to be able to make. And it's particularly acute as an issue for a professional boxer, because your money-making ability is predicated on your ability in the ring, right? Your ability to fight. And that is predicated in large measure on your youth. Boxing is a young man's game. But somehow these fighters, so many of them anyway, who are very successful, think that money's never going to run out. It's just always going to be there. I guess it's an aspect of the ego. But yeah, you have to adjust, because they say more money, more problems, you know, from the Notorious B.I.G. song. But really, it's the more money you make, the more ways you find of spending it. And Floyd Mayweather has become accustomed to a lifestyle, because he's made so much money over the years, which is extremely extravagant. And that's now normal to him. I mean, that's literally normal to him. So it's going to take a lot of mental adjustment, because one thing that having a lot of money gives you is freedom to do what you want, right? If all of a sudden you have to start tightening the purse strings, now you can't do all the things that you want to do. Now, to us, the things that Mayweather wants to do seem unnecessary, right? But he's used to it now. So maybe to him, it's like a very difficult change to make. So I think he can do it if he's forced to do it. I don't think he's one of these people that will just crash out and end up destitute because he'd rather spend every last penny, or he can't help but spend every last penny on keeping up this lavish lifestyle. I mean, the fact he's gone and got his team to do this audit and found supposedly $350 million missing, it shows that he's somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? Sensible? There's another word I'm looking for, but anyway, you know what I mean. He's somewhat cognizant of potential money issues. That's why he's gone and done this audit. I mean, I'm sure he's got financial people, you know, accountants and whatnot, who have come up with this, but I mean, maybe they've told him, look, you've got all these money issues, bam, we need to figure out what to do about it. Anyway, long story short, big up the sweet maths. I suspect Floyd can live within his means. Even if you don't want to, even if you don't like it, I suspect he can. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. NJ says, did he have to sell his other jet? I'm not sure. Leo says, Hatman, what did you make of Teofimo Lopez's dad behavior after the fight? Hardly surprising, was it? His dad's always been a bit of a donut. So, I mean, what was more comical to me was his behavior during the fight, not after the fight. Again, the non-existent advice he was giving him in the corner. Instead of giving him specific instructions, he was just doing the same thing he did in the George Kambosos fight. Knock him out. Where's your power? No, I mean, come on. Shout out to everyone locked in. The dramatic defeat of Nick Ball by Brandon Figueroa. That's what we've been talking about so far. And also answering super chats. So we do have one or two other things to talk about in the world of boxing. In fact, before we get to this other subject, boxing related, I want to talk about, oh no, actually it's to do with this. How many of you guys know about this? Lewis Crocker's mandatory defense of his IBF World Welterweight title against Liam Paro is set to take place in Australia. Paro's promoters No Limit Boxing won the purse bid and have announced the bout is to take place in his native Australia. There's a quote here. No Limit Boxing has secured promotional rights to Liam Paro's IBF World Title Challenge, successfully winning the official purse bid overnight to lock in a blockbuster World Championship bout on Australian soil. That's from the promoter. As the mandatory to the IBF champion Lewis Crocker, Paro will finally have the opportunity to fight for a world title in Australia after previously defended his IBF crown overseas. Final dates, venue, and event details will be announced shortly. Now, to just interject briefly, I watched an interview of Eddie Hearn speaking about this, and he said that Paro's team are looking to do the fight next month. Apparently, Paro was already in training for a different fight, so he's ready to go. Lewis Crocker better be ready to go because that's a very, very short notice period indeed. We're talking about a month's time. Anyway, continuing on, the 29-year-old Crocker is a popular figure in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where he lives and remains, and to the extent that, and to that extent, where Matchroom had planned to stage his latest title defense, but Paro told Boxing Scene, "I was confident I would win. I've traveled before and done it, but to have it on Australian ground is way better. I want to be a household name here, and touching on the judging over in the UK, it's pretty dodgy. We've seen some shows recently where even the commentary doesn't even know. If even the commentary is not on the same page, that's not good. But with the IBF, I was confident all I needed was a fair shake, and I'm confident I can get it done. But of course, I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot more excited and a lot more motivated to have it here. It's international judges. We don't have Aussie judges here. They're picked from all around the world, so the IBF are good at picking judges. We've both got a fair shake. The best man's going to win on the night. Whoever comes up and shows up and executes their game plan to the best is going to win." Now, the reason I want to talk about this here is because of the fact that Lewis Crocker, a newly crowned world champion, promoted by Eddie Hearn, is having to fight his mandatory challenger, Liam Paro, in his backyard because Eddie Hearn lost the purse bid. Now, losing a purse bid when you've got the champion, unless the other guy's some massive cash cow, it's pretty damn wild to lose the purse bid in that scenario. Let me explain why. Because a champion typically against the mandatory challenger is going to be getting 70% of the purse. So even if the challenger's promoter wins the purse bid, the split is still the same. The champion's going to get at least 70%. What that means is Eddie Hearn, the champion's promoter, he's getting his promoter's cut out of a much bigger percentage of the purse. You see what I'm saying? So let's say, I can't remember off the top of my head now exactly what the purse bid was. Let's say it was 1.5 million. That's 700, and if you split it 50-50, it'd be 750 grand. If you split it more accurately in terms of what a champion versus what a mandatory challenger would get, the champion might be on, I don't know, 800 grand, 900 grand, with the rest going to, no, in fact, it's going to be more than that. What am I talking about? No, the champion will get $1 million. If it was 1.5 million, the champion would get maybe 1.1 million, something like that. And the challenger would get whatever, 400 grand, 500 grand. So the promoter is getting his 15% out of the 1.1 million of the champion. The other promoter is getting his 15% out of the 400-500 grand. You see? So that means that as a promoter of the champion, you're supposed to win that bid. You're supposed to win that bid. You're getting a much bigger cut out of your fighter's purse. To lose that a bid in that situation is just wild. All right, it's wild. But it's not the first time that this has happened with Matchroom. And it's not like the rival promoter is some big time promoter. Matchroom is far bigger than they are. Matchroom have got access to far more money than they do. And the purse bid was only lost by about 20 grand. I mean, Eddie Hearn probably spends 20 grand on suits in a couple of months. Like, what's 20 grand to Eddie Hearn? So yeah, the fact that he wouldn't back his fighter and win the bid and get the fight in Belfast is just wild. But it speaks to how miserly the Hearns are, how penny pinching they are. They're not really interested in going out on a limb for most of their fighters to try and get home advantage. That's more of a Frank Warren thing. Frank Warren's more willing to go out on a limb in order to get the fight on home soil and stuff like that. Not because he loves the fighter, but because he genuinely believes that there's a higher percentage of them winning, and therefore there's more longevity commercially promoting that fighter. So yeah, what do you guys think of this? Eddie Hearn losing another purse bid. This time, Crocker has to go and face Liam Paro in his first defense of the IBF welterweight title in Australia. And by the way, I'm picking Liam Paro to win this fight. Yeah, I know Lewis Crocker's coming off, well, 2 wins against Paddy Donovan officially, but the first win was very controversial. The second win was legit. Paddy Donovan being a southpaw, but southpaws are not all made the same. I obviously had this conversation in the run-up to the Teofimo Lopez-Shakur Stevenson fight, people saying, well, Lopez has been in there and beat a high-level southpaw before in Lomachenko. Yeah, but Lomachenko and Stevenson are totally different type of fighters. I'm not saying the difference between Crocker and Paro is as big, but they're still different type of fighters. Excuse me, Donovan and Paro is as big, but they're still different type of fighters. And I think Liam Paro's going to win the fight. Long story short. Big up AJ for the super chat. He says, reminded me of Robert Guerrero's dad's advice against Mayweather. Attack, attack, attack. I don't actually remember his advice against Mayweather, but obviously I remember Robert Guerrero's dad. A hilarious caricature, like a caricature of a cholo from the 90s or the 80s or 90s. Yes, indeed. Hearn also lost the purse bid for Dalton Smith, but Dalton Smith was the challenger in that particular instance. So it's more understandable, more forgivable for a promoter to lose a purse bid when his fighter is the challenger. But to lose a purse bid when his fighter is the champion, unless it's a crazy bid that comes in from the challenger's team, unless the challenger is some type of enormous cash cow, then there's really no excuse for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, your fighter is... See, Eddie Hearn loves to talk about loyalty. Frank Warren, all these promoters talk about loyalty, right? How can a fighter be loyal to you when you won't even pay an extra 20, 30 grand to get him home advantage for his first world title defense? Like, dear, oh dear, oh dear. And Eddie Hearn, like I say, has got a pattern of losing these purse bids. Indeed, some promoters, excuse me, kind of game the system, could you call it that? They'll bid far more than they're actually going to pay their fighter. What they'll do is they'll have an agreement behind the scenes. I don't know whether this is legal in the UK, but it certainly goes on in other countries. They'll have agreement going on behind the scenes. In fact, I think it is legal in the UK because it was suggested that Tyson Fury had maybe done this at one point, right? Frank Warren and Tyson Fury. But anyway, I've got no knowledge of that, but I'm just saying what was suggested online. But the way it's done is the promoter will have an agreement with the fighter to pay them a certain amount behind the scenes, irrespective of what the purse bid ends up being. So that way, let's say the fighter, he's agreed to pay the fighter 20 million if it's a really high level fighter, agreed to pay him 20 million, but the purse bid ends up being, I don't know, 30, 40 million, right? They still have to pay the challenger the 30% from that 30, 40 million, but the champion is only going to get 20 million. So they've basically put a cap on how much they have to pay despite the fact there's a purse bid. So that's one tactic that some promoters use so they don't have to splash out too crazily Casa says it shows Hearn must be on a tight budget and where the bid was their maximum. Well, I think Eddie Hearn's budgets are made by himself. Obviously, they get a budget from the zone, but I'm talking about, 20 grand is what they lost the purse bid by. Eddie Hearn could have used 20 grand of his own money. Now, Eddie Hearn is literally a multi-millionaire. 20 grand. Look at Eddie Hearn's suit collection, right? His suits are worth more than 20 grand. 20 grand to Eddie Hearn is nothing. It's literally like the average person buying Nando's or something. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not too far off, right? 20 grand to Eddie Hearn is nothing. So the idea that he couldn't go beyond that particular amount because it's outside of his budget, I mean, nah, for me, it doesn't fly. I just think the Hearns are penny pinchers. That's their mentality. Frank Warren has said for years that the Hearns are first and foremost accountants before they're boxing people, and it's true. They're accountants first and boxing people second, and accountants are obsessed with the numbers and balancing the books and penny pinching everywhere. That's just the mentality, right? We got Afro Soul. He says many Roblers said they weren't allowed to be present when Nick Ball was getting his hands wrapped. Isn't that illegal? As far as I'm aware, it's not actually illegal. No, it's not illegal. As long as there's a member of the British Boxing Board of Control or whatever commission, then that's all you need to have as far as having your hands wrapped. Where they have a member of the other team watching the wrapping of the hands, that's just a professional courtesy, which has become ubiquitous. It's become commonplace, right? Where they do this professional courtesy of allowing a member of the other team in the locker room before the fight to watch the hand wrapping. But as I understand it, it is not illegal to stop them from watching the hands being wrapped. You don't have to have them in there if you don't want them to be in there. And one of the reasons, to play devil's advocate, one of the reasons that you might not want a member of the opposing team to be in your locker room wrapping your hands is because sometimes they're just in there to cause trouble. Sometimes they're going to start nitpicking at the hand wrapping to a ridiculous extent just to unsettle the fighter and unsettle the team. That does happen. I mean, famously, Conor Benn sent Billy Joe Saunders to Chris Eubank Jr.'s room to watch his hand. That was obviously a move to try and unsettle Chris Eubank Jr. And Eubank Jr. didn't let him in. It's not illegal to refuse a member of the other team access to the dressing room to watch the hand wraps. Big up Liam Goff, aka G-Man. Big up, big up. Okay, somebody was saying it was Liam Smith. Excuse me, was it for the Liam Smith first or second fight? Was it Liam Smith that sent Billy Joe to Eubank Jr.'s dressing room, or was it Conor Benn for their first fight? I forget now. Eubank had Napa, his manager, preventing Billy Joe from entering the dressing room. Napa's like 6'5", big muscle-bound weightlifting guy, ex-rapper. Oh, it was Ben. Okay, big up Casa, big up Joshua. It was Ben who sent Billy Joe. It just seems like a Conor Benn move. Do you know what I mean? To send Billy Joe Saunders to Eubank Jr.'s locker room. Okay, Kieran says it was Ben, but Napa said someone else from Ben's team was in there. Okay. But you get the point I make. It's big up atavistic intellect. A fighter might oppose allowing a member of the rival's team into the dressing room because they don't want to be disrupted in any way. The guy might come in and start talking rubbish and nitpicking to a ridiculous extent and just trying to frustrate the fighter. It isn't necessarily because there's something illegal going on with the wrapping of the hands. It could be, in some cases, maybe the home fighter and the local member of the commission are a bit too pally, and the local member of the commission is going to let their hands be wrapped illegally. I'm sure that has happened at certain times in in boxing, but it isn't always that. There might be legitimate concerns. Yeah, people talking about Nick Ball. If he'd gone up against Inoue, based on what they saw here against Figueroa, they didn't really fancy his chances. But to be fair, Nick Ball just got knocked out by a guy who's much bigger than Inoue. Not that size in boxing is everything, but it's something you have to consider and factor in. Sam says, I remember Partridge, when he used to deserve being called Tyson Fury, asked Vitali to sign his gloves after getting wrapped before the Vlad fight. Lagvinda says, imagine Liam Smith sending in Begbie from Train Spotting to watch the hands being wrapped. Begbie was played by Robert Carlyle, right? Train Spotting, for those of you who don't know, was a movie that came out, God, when was it? The late 90s? Based in Edinburgh and based around a bunch of skag junkies. Ewan McGregor was in it. Again, Robert Carlyle. Is his name Robert Carlyle? Robbie Carlyle? I'm pretty sure it is. I know his surname's Carlyle. And yeah, there are a bunch of skag junkies. Okay, Hansa still makes a good point. He's responding to Arman's comment about Latinos always mashing up British fighters. He says, not Latinos, but Mexicans specifically. Dalton and Shiraz just beat two Latinos. They did indeed. Dalton just beat, well, they both just beat Puerto Ricans, right? Matias and Balanga are Puerto Ricans. All right, peeps. I'm just gonna take a short break for 2 or 3 minutes. I won't be long. I will be back, and then we'll move on to the night flight. We'll get on to some non-boxing related topics. We can circle back and talk about boxing as well, no problem whatsoever. But the floor is now open to discuss whatever you guys want to discuss within reason, all right? So just give me 2 or 3 minutes. I'll be back very, very shortly. All right, we're back in the building. Shout out to everyone in the live chat, everyone locked in. We can get into some non-boxing topics if you guys wish. Obviously, we have to be careful with how descriptive we are, because YouTube is a sensitive platform. Big up James Clifford for the super chat. He says, not going Mayweather broke here in France, as I am in a 2-star motel, my 2 dogs sleeping on the bed, and I bet on Bull losing by KO. Get the likes up. Big up James Clifford every time. You in the south of France there? Much appreciated to James Clifford. In a 2-star motel. Have I played Cyberpunk 2077? No, I haven't. One second here. James Clifford says in Orleans. Which part of France is Orleans? I'm not even sure. I'm assuming it's not in the south then. Matt Borgeson says that was a wonderful KO. Lieutenant Frank says, I thought Bull did really well. Okay, he lost, but his strategy and effort was fine. Have I heard of Paul Sykes from Yorkshire? Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know all about Paul Sykes. From Wakefield. Let me tell you something, says, which meltdown was worse, AJ Fury or Wilder? Definitely Wilder. Wilder's meltdown is just bizarre. Yeah, there was a lot cut out of the Wilder-Jordan interview. Wilder said a lot more stuff, threatened to punch Sam. Yeah, he said all sorts of stuff. Wilder is an idiot, but with him being in this heightened emotional state, it's possible that he'll be able to produce a lot more of those devastating right hands in the fight. Because I think Wilder's a guy that fights off emotion. Why did I move to Africa? For a whole raft of reasons. Just generally, lifestyle, quality of life, basically. Quality of life. I mean, it's so much cheaper than living in the UK, and because I've got a remote income, it just makes sense. I have a much higher standard of living in Africa than I had in the UK. Much higher standard of living. Because, as I say, the cost of living is so much cheaper. And there's the cultural aspects too. The weather, right? I don't like cold weather. Leo O'Brien says, Derek Chisora seemed calm during the Wilder press conference. Well, Derek Chisora's been calm at most press conferences for a long time now. He's in a very jovial mood these days. Whenever he fights, he's just laughing and joking and trolling people. King James says, Del Boy is selective when he tries to be a bully. Wilder wouldn't have let him pull that BS. Well, maybe not, but who does Derek Chisora really try and bully anymore? They did face off, remember? A few months ago. Or weeks ago, whenever it was. And Derek Chisora kind of, tried to impose himself a little bit. But as Black Dynamite said there, the calmness comes with old age. You can't really get amped up at 40. That's a whole fact. Although Wilder does, but Wilder's always been a very, hyper character. But But no, I just think Derek Chisora has mellowed and he's not as fire as he used to be in general. Derek Chisora, let me tell you what he is. He's an agent of chaos. And since he's not partaking in the chaos himself anymore, he likes to manipulate other people or exacerbate chaotic situations involving other people, which is what he was doing there when Wilder was going at Simon Jordan. Like, you could hear Derek in the background basically encouraging Wilder to have a go at Jordan, not because he agreed with anything that Wilder was saying, but just because he likes creating chaos. It's the same with Eddie Hearn. He likes embarrassing Eddie Hearn at press conferences. Chisora will sit back laughing when people are beefing at press conferences. It amuses him. He enjoys it. He enjoys, stirring the pot and egging people on. He's an agent of chaos. Lakvinder Singh says, Hatman, have you ever watched Fallen with Denzel Washington? Yeah, that's a very good movie. That's a very good movie, Fallen with Denzel Washington. Very good film. Very interesting film. King James says Chisora is going to be London mayor when Reform win the election. I can't imagine he'd be any worse than Sadiq Khan, so it's not as crazy as you might think. So Vamsy says, why do you not do film reviews anymore? I do film reviews. I've done film, although maybe you've missed them because I've done them during night flight shows. So there are other night flight shows where I've reviewed specific films. And I review films on Patreon as well. But as I say, even free to watch on YouTube, I do have various film reviews during my night flight shows. I watched a lot of movies last year, by the way. Like loads of movies at the cinema. Loads of them. Off the top of my head, I can tell you that I watched Nosferatu, Mickey 17, Final Destination Bloodlines. There was a shark film that I watched, which I can't remember the name of. But I watched so many movies, I've literally lost track. I watched loads and loads of movies last year at the cinema. Loads of them. That's probably the most movies I've watched at the cinema for years. Leo says, was Nosferatu garbage, Hatman? No, I liked it. I thought the first half was a lot better than the second half, but I thought it was a solid movie from Robert Eggers. I like the visual style and everything. Striker says Wilder has nothing between his ears, but he seems like a nice guy. He's always pleasant and friendly to fans. Well, yeah, it depends on your definition of nice guy, but he's capable of being nice for sure. He's capable of being cordial and but I've never been somebody who has an issue with fighters or public figures in general who don't want to talk to fans. Because imagine being a public figure. Wherever you go, people are going to ask for selfies and autographs and all this kind of stuff. Like, you're not a public servant as a boxer or as a singer, right? Or an actor. You are not a public servant. It's not like you're a politician. So what obligation do you have to stop and pose for pictures and selfies and do autographs? You can't go about your day normally. Yeah, it comes with the territory. You have to expect it, but I don't think that a public figure is under any obligation to talk to fans or anything like that. That's why when I see famous people, and I've seen many famous people out and about over the years, I leave them alone. I don't talk to them. At the most, I might, if I like their work, I might, shout, yeah, big up, I like your work. But I never impose myself on them and stop them for a selfie and all that kind of business. Now, I'm not saying that you're a bad person if you do that. okay? But I'm just saying that I see it from that public figure's perspective. I try and put myself in their shoes and think, man, how annoying would it be if I was constantly getting stopped and asked for selfies, and which is one of the reasons that I don't appear on camera. Not that I'd be a celebrity or anything, but, you know, I get recognized and I don't want to have my privacy constantly interrupted by people trying to stop and chat boxing or talk this or take self. It's just not for me. And when you don't want it, and even worse than that, is people filming you without telling you that they're filming you. You know, like that. You'd be out for a restaurant somewhere and someone's zooming in on the camera, and it's like, come on, bro. I don't need all that in my life. No privacy. People don't respect privacy. Why would I never come back to the UK? Or why would I? As I said previously, I mean, this is where I'm living now. I enjoy a much higher standard of living in Africa than I do in the UK. My money goes much further. It's literally like 5 or 6 times cheaper. So there's just no reason. Also, I don't like cold weather. I don't like British weather. I don't like the current socio-political climate in Britain at all. As somebody that is a foreigner, right? I'm not an indigenous Brit. I migrated to the UK with my family in the 80s. So imagine you're a foreigner and you're being blamed for every bad thing that ever goes wrong in the country now. So Lieutenant Frank says, what Garcia turns up for the Barrios fight, I wonder. I'm fascinated to see whether the juice made him better than we thought. The Raleigh fight leaves some big questions which might get answered. Yeah. Moving up in weight. There's a question over that for Garcia. What went on in that Romero fight? That's a question. The size of Barrios, even though Barrios is coming up in weight too, he's been at 147 for a long time now. He looks massive next to Ryan Garcia. There's loads of questions. Loads of questions. Ryan Garcia's never been a great boxer. He's always been a great athlete, an explosive puncher, great hand speed, but he's never been a great boxer. Barrios is not a great boxer either, but he's been in there with some great boxers, you know, at this point, or good boxers at least. So I don't think from a skill perspective, Barrios is going to be out of his depth against Ryan Garcia. From an athleticism perspective, yes, but from a skill perspective, he's not going to be out of his depth. Ryan Garcia is not an amazingly skilled fighter. Chris Ward Music says, late call, Evening Hatman gutted Nick Bull and fellow Scouser got KO'd. Well, you know, Nick Bull hasn't been looking that great for a while now, though. Fit Pro Tune says, Naz strikes me as rather narcissistic. Oh yeah, very much so. Very much so. You know, Adam Booth said years ago in an interview that there's a lot of narcissists in boxing. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of narcissists in boxing because narcissism at its core is just the state of being self-interested. And boxing, of course, is a solo sport, right? So you have to be self-interested. Someone that is not self-absorbed enough is going to find it difficult in boxing. Whereas someone who is just totally ruthless and self-interested has an advantage in boxing. But you know, some narcissists are funny and entertaining. You wouldn't necessarily want to be friends with them. But as a viewer, they can be very entertaining. And yeah, David Haye was definitely very entertaining. An entertaining character, entertaining ego, entertaining rhetoric, calling Nikolai Valuev something out of Lord of the Rings. The comment about Audley Harrison and their fight was going to be as one-sided as a you-know-what. Yeah, Haye was hilarious. particularly hilarious because he didn't back down. You know, he would stand 10 toes down on what he said. Sky tried to get him to recant or apologize. You guys remember that? When he made the Audley Harrison comments and he refused to apologize. I was like, okay. Hay is standing on business, 10 toes down. David A. Yeah, when he started having a go at Tony Bellew's supporters, that was funny. He said, I earn more than all of you lot. He turned into Ted DiBiase from WWF. You guys remember that? Man turned into the $1 Million Man from wrestling. That's how dastardly Hay became. Berating Tony Bellew's supporters for not making the money that he makes. Yeah, he did. He looked genuinely mad. He looked genuinely mad in that moment. Hey, he lost it. Oh, dear. So Hay was funny. And Hay was a massive liar too, which used to drive me up the wall. Because he avoided the Klitschko's for a couple years. But he gaslit the public into believing that the Klitschko's were avoiding him. And that did drive me up the wall. Like, you know when someone is gaslighting the public, but you feel like you're the only one who can see it? It's a very, like, frustrating thing. So I got accused back then of being a David Hay hater. Right? Because Hay was very popular and people were going in on me. You hate David. Did David Hay steal your girlfriend or something? Why are you always criticizing? Bro, as much as I always liked David Hay's rhetoric and his boxing style and all that kind of thing, I'm not going to sit here and act like he weren't lying to high heaven about the Klitschko's avoiding him. I mean, David Hay had such audacity that when he signed to fight Audley Harrison, his justification was that the public demanded the fight and were more interested in him fighting Audley than they are him fighting Klitschko. Man literally said that out of his own mouth. I was like, yo, the audacity of this guy's lies are crazy. Crazy. Dear, oh dear. And it wouldn't have frustrated me so much if it weren't for the fact that most people seem to believe him. See, it doesn't bother me so much when someone's lying if no one believes them. But when, like, most people believe them and you're one of the few people that don't believe them, bro, it's so frustrating. When you're one of the few people that can see through the BS, it's so frustrating. But yeah, all in all, Hay was a very funny, entertaining fighter in the ring, character outside the ring. And I still like watching David Hay interviews even now when he's talking about other fights. I always tune in. Hay is a charismatic guy. He's an interesting guy, you know? He's got a harem over there in Costa Rica. Yeah. So this is the latest topical episode I've done on Patreon. If you guys check what's on screen, where are we at? Now, that is my latest topical episode on Patreon. I talk for about an hour and give my thoughts on the situation. As far as the specifics, you know, specific accusations, I'll talk even more about it in subsequent Patreon episodes. But in this one, I focused on what you can see on the screen there. And I gave some historical examples of, or a historical example of something very similar to this, which is very relevant. So yeah, that's my latest topical Patreon episode on the Brotherhood of Reason tier. So make sure you check that out. You want to check out my exclusive content. Again, it's on Patreon. It's whatever it is, £3 a month. There's no contract. You can cancel at any time. Just the same way Netflix works, where you can cancel whenever you want. Same way you get access to my entire back catalog, which is, I guess, thousands of episodes at this point. On the boxing tier, this was my last upload. It's me analyzing, yeah, AJ, the most analyzed boxer of all time, or overanalyzed boxer of all time. I'm joining the party and overanalyzing him as well in this video, talking about some of the claims that people have made regarding the tragic, horrific accident that AJ was involved in. People are making all sorts of claims. Some of them, I'm sure, could be described as distasteful, but other people would say it's a weird world and you have to entertain things. I mean, the Steen files are showing us how dark the world of public entertainers can actually be. So you can't put anything past any of these people. Do you know what I mean? If you're looking at it objectively. Not that I've ever accused AJ of anything dark or anything like that, but other people have. And so I explore that a little bit in this episode on Patreon on the boxing tier, the Boxing Brotherhood. I explore people's different claims and theories about AJ, and then give my take on his demeanor, and what I think is going to happen in his career moving forward, or if he's actually going to have a boxing career moving forward, if he's actually going to return to the ring. I'll give all those thoughts in this latest episode on the boxing tier, the Boxing Brotherhood. That's on my Patreon page. All the links are in the description if you want to check it out. And again, the latest topical podcast is this one here, which you can see on screen. All right. All right, peeps, gonna wrap this one up. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on this live stream, with a special shout out going to those who donated via Super Chat. Give me a second, I'll call your names out. So they were Matt Borgerson, Just Brian, GMS Nightmare, Supersized Fries, 1-1 The Sweet Maths, AJ, James Clifford, Mr. Classic Metal. Big up Mr. Classic Metal. Fit Pro Tunes, Matthew Wilson, and D-Man again. All right. So special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. Big up everyone else. It's been a great conversation. We've talked about some topics which YouTube will probably deem controversial. So I may have to edit out quite a bit of this. I'll upload the full unedited version on my Patreon page as usual. I did have a video demonetized the other day. So I don't want that happening on a constant basis, because once that algorithm gets hold of your channel, oh, you're gonna have a problem. So you got to nip this stuff in the bud. You got to get ahead of this stuff before it happens. So I'm probably gonna have to chop out quite a bit of the stream, but I'll upload the full unedited version on my Patreon page. Anyway, until next time, take care. Be good. I'll catch you guys on the other side. I will try and do a stream again tomorrow as well. So we'll catch up then, all right? Peace.